David Elsendoorn here, aka Jan Maas. I hope you're having a great Lasso day. And please keep channel your inner Dutchman. Keep it real. Keep finding the truth. Keep spitting it. Enjoy your day.
Quickly, we got more great content coming up to the stage shortly. Will be Dr. David Kilpatrick, who I'm very pleased to be able to introduce, because not only is he a professor of English, not only does he have a degree in philosophy, but he has a degree in sports management and talks about sports all the time. Let's bring David Kilpatrick to the stage, please. David, thank you so much and welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much for having me. Really humbling to come on after the speakers we've already had. So my name is David Kilpatrick, and the title of my talk is the Messianic Manager and the Power of Myth in Ted Lasso. But I also have kind of an alternative subtitle of RomCommunism, Sport Management, and the Suspension of Disbelief. So I didn't care for the Ted Lasso character when he first appeared in August 2013. Yes, I admit I laughed. I like Jason Sudeikis on SNL, but a Gooner since my first match at Highbury on New Year's Eve 1994, I hate Tottenham. And the stereotype of the ignorant Yank struck me as offensive, the kind of thing American soccer historians and coaches are combating daily. As a marketing strategy to promote NBC's broadcasts of English Premier League matches, I was quite frankly annoyed by an American coach in London. Football, not as we know it. Who is this we, and why is there an assumption of what we know or do not know? Well, what do I know? Positionality determines epistemology. I've been playing organized soccer since 1976, though my father, who played in the late 1950s in upstate New York, taught me how to control a ball before I joined the Christ the King Lutheran Kingsmen that fall season in Memphis, Tennessee. The New York Cosmos were in their heyday with Pelé, and it seemed for a while that soccer would quickly become the preeminent sport in America. By the time I went to college, the Cosmos Champagne Supernova had burned out, but I began coaching after the World Cup in 1994, and my love for live professional soccer was rekindled, seeing Arsenal on the last day of that year at Highbury. After a doctoral dissertation in comparative literature on tragedy and the sacred at Binghamton, and earning tenure at Mercy College, teaching English and writing dramatic criticism, I turned to sport literature and the philosophy of sport, then sport management. In 2012, I became the official club historian of the revived New York Cosmos, and in 2018 became professor of English literature and sport management and the director of sport management at Mercy College. My current research focusing on the aesthetics of sport, coaching education, and the history of soccer in New York. So watching Ted Lasso might well be viewed as an obvious occupational obligation. But I tried to justify my hesitation on lack of verisimilitude. It wasn't that Wichita State's gridiron program had been defunct since I graduated high school in 1986. It was that an NCAA D2 gridiron football coach making the professional transition to coaching soccer in the United Kingdom is something I know to be unbelievable, impossible, given the UK's current international sports person visa requirements. Although the show may be partly inspired by Terry Smith's time in charge at Chester City 2 decades ago, he was the owner, and the club no longer exists. The only American to coach at the elite level of the Premier League was former U.S. men's national team head coach Bob Bradley, hired and sacked as manager by Swansea City's American owners in less than 3 months in 2016. Even the tactical guru Ralph Rangnick, if I'm saying his name right, I apologize if not, just this week is finding it difficult to secure this visa to take over as manager at Manchester United. It seemed as if the joke was, to some degree, at the expense of myself and so many Americans who loved and lived soccer, who dreamed of such a position in European football. So I wasn't willing to suspend my disbelief. When the show launched, I clicked on Apple Plus for a moment, but didn't subscribe. Didn't watch the pilot in August last year. I finally got curious when my best friend's wife got him an AFC Richmond jersey for his birthday this June. You see, I'm wearing one now. Then a few weeks later, a player asked, "Hey, coach, have you seen Ted Lasso?" People I care for, caring for the show, got me to care, got me curious. so I finally took the dive and tried Apple Plus to see the show. In the opening scene, as Gunnar Johnny Rotten sings "No Future," we see the team at play in training, only for the song to abruptly slow to silence. The club's owner, Rebecca, stares at a Hockney painting which she disposes of. God save the Queen? She's the Queen, and it's not just the art that needs saving. She fires the misogynist George, who serves as the stereotypical English gaffer. We're introduced to Ted Lasso on ESPN SportsCenter, Scott Van Pelt wishing the coaching Pollyanna, quote, "Good luck with the most beautiful game. Do us proud. Go America." I felt intense ambivalence in that I loved seeing the soccer action, found the transition of ownership an interesting case study of a critical juncture for a club, and would gladly take the painting she'd throw away. But the soccer and American exceptionalism shtick hit the familiar, sensitive nerve. It was when Ted turns back to find Beard reading Inverting the Pyramid that I was hooked. Yes, Soccer for Dummies was on his lap, too, but my love for Wilson's history of soccer tactics from 2008 overcame my lack of will to suspend disbelief. Seeing Beard read that book on that flight was my road to Damascus moment. That wasn't the only pyramid to figure in the pilot. A framed pyramid of success, signed by John Wooden, is among the messages Lasso and Beard display in the Greyhounds locker room. The show directly addresses issues of coaching and aesthetic education with symbolic, mythic imagery. The show doesn't reinforce the stereotype. It challenges and deconstructs dominant sporting and societal narratives. Soon I became an AFC Richmond fanatic, like so many others over the summer, especially helping me cope with the Cosmos being once again placed on hiatus. The Greyhounds aren't the first fictional football club to earn my affection. The Melchester Rovers from Roy of the Rovers, like the New York Knights of the Natural or the Charleston Chiefs of Slapshot, are fictional teams I've come to love. Why do we feel the need to represent sport and art? Why and what impulse draws us to cheer fictional teams? According to Aristotle, the mimetic impulse, the will to create and delight in imitations or representations, is an instinctual, essential element of what it means to be human. Countering his mentor's claims, or his mentor's representation of his mentor's claims, that mimicry is dangerous for the soul. But Aristotle counters that in his Poetics. This is written around 335 BCE, noting that we not only derive pleasure from this mimetic impulse, it is how we learn. Ted Lasso's stimulation of this mimetic impulse is evident not only in the quality and quantity of fan art it inspires. The popularity of the show's characters this Halloween was an indisputable, unavoidable, seemingly ubiquitous cultural phenomenon. How many of you dressed up for Halloween in Lasso gear? The show doesn't just have fans, it has inspired believers. This mimetic impulse is, of course, what brings us together today for LassoCon2. Perhaps the most obvious mimetic challenge for any staging or screening of sport fiction is the imitation or representation of sporting action, which we just heard about from our Emmy Award-winning speaker just now. If the action is poorly staged, the narrative will lack verisimilitude. It will appear too fake to take seriously. If the actors playing players are not technically proficient as players, we cannot take their acting seriously. The opening scene of the pilot dismisses this concern. Aristotle identifies opsis as among the 6 constituent elements of drama and poetics, but lists it as the last and least most important. He ranks muthos as the priority, and it is this element I would most like to emphasize today. Usually translated as plot or the sequence of events, muthos is what happens. But rather than a pejorative sense of myth as mere fiction, a lie, or misconception, instead I would like to explore the idea of a sacred story, one that has power. When Ted encounters the independent Trent Krim towards the end of the last episode of Season 2, he offers the writer these words of encouragement. As the man says, follow your bliss. That man would be Joseph Campbell, who says these words while speaking with Bill Moyers in The Power of Myth. And it is this mythical power I'd like to pursue today, to explore the mimetic impact of the show at this critical juncture, at the end of the second season of a show planned for 3. In his book from 2010, The Manager, Barney Renee identifies the Messianic Manager as soccer's #1 narrative archetype. The Messianic Manager saves the club or takes them to paradise. This archetype is explored in the faction of David Peace in his novels The Damned United and Red or Dead, based upon Brian Clough and Bill Shankly, respectively. At the Beautiful Game Conference in Basel 5 years ago, and in my chapter in the book The Aesthetics, Poetics, and Rhetoric of Soccer, I explored the archetypal figure of the Messianic Manager in these novels as myth-making, which, like the most powerful myths, offer models for behavior, ethos or an ethics, for heroic conduct in the face of conflict. Those novels, I argue, would be most valuable for coaching education, which tends to neglect the humanities altogether, with little concern for aesthetics or the cultivation of empathy. That archetype is embodied by this show's titular protagonist, and his shamanic sidekick Beard further enhances the sacred dimension of the story. Those involved in sport management might well be more likely to watch the show or the film version of The Damned United than read Peace's novels, but the myth is no less powerful in Ted Lasso. Coleridge had the problem of supersensory realm in mind as a narrative challenge when he coined the phrase, the willful suspension of disbelief. Much of the charm of the show, as so many say, is its lightness and good nature. But there is a supernatural element, requiring or inspiring what Coleridge calls poetic belief, that I would like to explore briefly in the plot of the show, as it enhances the mythical power of the story of the Messianic Manager. That the characters themselves and the club itself are in need of redemption is clear from the exposition of the pilot episode. But with the 6th episode and the introduction of Danny Rojas, a spirited fellow whose football is life mantra epitomizes Lasso's philosophy of play and life, arrives at Nelson Road, countering the cynical solipsism of Jamie Tartt. But when the joyous raven-haired golden retriever suffers a bizarre injury, it becomes evident the Greyhounds have a curse to reverse. Gentlemen, I am by nature a believer. Ghosts, spirit guides, aliens, says Ted. Still, I can't actually tell you what lives beyond our physical world and what doesn't. Higgins explains the club's history, that in 1914 at Nelson Road, 400 would-be trialists were deceived and recruited for the war. As Colin says, that's too many ghosts. But while Lasso doesn't claim to know the suprasensory realm, the sacrificial ritual of fire he conducts transforms Richmond's furies to Eumenides. In the final episode of the first season, Lasso stages another ritual with the anointing of Nate as a coach with a whistle. Do you believe in miracles? Lasso asks the team, but ironically, Tartt plays the extra pass to send AFC Richmond into relegation. In the first episode of the second season, Nathan asks, is it okay if I pray? Ted replies, yeah, of course, but to which God and in what language, you know? The killing of the mascot, Earl Greyhound, by Rojas, is a catastrophic, unwelcome answer to their prayers. In the 5th episode of the second season, Lasso delivers his sermon on RomCommunism, and he bends down to pray in the kebab shop that Roy will rejoin the club as a coach. In the next episode, Rebecca asks aloud, do you believe in guardian angels? And Beard tells Tartt, you're going to want to look up Philistines. Then in the 7th episode, after telling Nathan to do better, Beard disappears. The biblical theme is mentioned again by Arlo White after the loss in year 2, episode 8, when he says, Goliath puts David back in his place after Richmond lose to Man City. But it is Beard's shamanic descent into the underworld in the 9th episode. Is that an option in your poll, by the way? I've got to ask for best episode of season 2. In that 9th episode of the second season, that most emphatically provides a sacred dimension to the story. Ted is a man, just a man, he says, and if this is all indeed just a simulation, all we can do is tip our caps to the rascal that's pulling the strings. Beard tells Sarah Coons his name is none of my business, like the nobody of Odysseus in Book 9 of the Odyssey. His beloved Jane Payne texts, I'm atoning for my sins, and after seeking sanctuary in a church and praying for salvation, he finds her dancing among neon crosses. Am I in heaven? No, that's Nelson Road. The funeral of Rebecca's father brings the entire cast together in a sacred space, although the Anglican priest has no tolerance for the women's erotically inspired laughter. We learn Rebecca and Ted share a day of sorrow, Friday the 13th of September, 1991, when she found her father betraying her mother and Ted's father committed suicide. The date marks the Ides of September, celebrated in ancient Rome as the Apulum Jovis, the feast or banquet of Jove, God the Father. Nathan assumes the role of Judas, or is it Oedipus, or Darth Vader, joining Rupert's West Ham in the Season 2 finale. AFC Richmond achieved promotion back to the Premier League, but will salvation come next season? Will it come in the form of an FA Cup win, the Premier League title, the double? What miracles to come? We find ourselves at the end of Season 2, waiting for Season 3, in a unique narrative space. Every story needs a beginning, middle, and an end, according to Aristotle, so we're stuck in this narrative middle. We have Wilson's and Wooden's pyramids, but we also have Freytag's pyramid to contend with, as we consider what path the plot will take as the series moves to resolution. Will the ending make it a tragedy or a comedy? Will we have catastrophe or denouement? Allow me to play Tiresias or Isaiah and attempt prophetically to see what might happen. What would constitute happy endings? I'll just say, I'm rooting for Ted and Sharon, or Ted and Rebecca. Remember, Sharon's favorite book is Prince of Tides, so where is that going? I'm concerned about Sassy, or I'm rooting for Rebecca and Sam. Beard and Jane Payne, I'm hoping, make it. Roy and Ms. Bowen, that's who I'm pulling for. Jamie making peace with his father. He doesn't need anyone else. And I'm really hoping that Nate and Keeley equals true love always. Yes, Nate and Keeley, that's who I'm putting my money on. I'm concerned Rupert's daughter and Higgins' rainbow love might be catastrophic casualties that counter the merely comic effect of any happy endings. A year from now, we'll have the answer to those mysteries. But for now, we find ourselves in suspense, wondering what will come, how the myth will reach resolution. I hope I've teased out to some degree how the show taps into the power of myth, how its mimetic provocation has a meaningful impact on the lives of those who suspend their disbelief. With the figure of the Messianic Manager, we have hope of redemption and salvation, not only for the fictional AFC Richmond, but in reality. I believe in RomCommunism. I believe it can save soccer, save sport, save society. Maybe you're going to be the one that saves me. Well, we'll see in Season 3. Thank you.
That was incredible. Wow, David, thank you so much. I love the amount of learning you're able to pack into that short a period of time. Now I just have to ask, are you really on the Nate and Keeley bandwagon here? I gotta understand that one.
I think she can save him. I really do, and I think that when she goes out shopping with him, Roy's not going to go shopping with her, but he loves it. I think he brings out the best in her, she clearly brings out the best in him. And yes. I'm still hoping that he can be saved, and maybe, just maybe, he'll bring out the best in her too.
That is incredible. Well, are there any other thoughts that you want to share? We're running a little over, so we'll probably move on if you don't have anything. But if there's anything last that you want to share, again, just an incredible lecture. Really appreciated it.
Thanks so much. It's really fun to be a part of such a wonderful event. Thanks so much. Heaven knows I tried.